I am Lawrence Chuno, and this is Doing Jazz. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Doing Jazz. My name is Lawrence Chuno, and this episode is with saxophonist and composer Daniel Bennet. On his new album, We Are The Orchestra, Daniel Bennet and guitarist Mark Cocheo present a collection of songs inspired by the poetry and essays of Walt Whitman. As the name of the album may allude to, We Are The Orchestra is somewhat magical, as it has the instrumentation of a larger band, yet its spirit and execution is that of a duo. As a side note, I must mention that I particularly enjoy this episode of the show because Daniel was very forthcoming and generous about his experience in booking shows, running a label, and running a festival, and I believe these pieces of information will be useful to someone out there. The song playing in the background is called Loose Fitting Spare Tires. During my conversation with Daniel, you'll hear the songs Refinancing for Elephants and Theme from II Trovatore. These songs are all from the album We Are The Orchestra. After listening to this episode, you can learn more about Daniel Bennet by going to the website of the show, www.doingjazz.net. You can follow the show on Instagram and Twitter. The handle is @doingjazz, and you can listen to more episodes of Doing Jazz by subscribing on iTunes, Spotify, or any of the available podcast vendors. If you're on Spotify, please follow the Doing Jazz playlist, a one-stop playlist for songs by all the Doing Jazz guests so far. While on iTunes, please rate the show, leave a comment, and share the show with your loved ones. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I present Daniel Bennet. In your face. Daniel Bennet, welcome to Doing Jazz.
It's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Off mic, we're talking about things you used to do.
Yeah.
Like you used to have a music festival.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about it again?
Yeah, well, about 10 years ago, I produced a very large music festival in Rochester, New York, which is also my hometown. Shout out to Rochester. And it was called Open Fest. It later became called Bennett Alliance Open Fest. And that was the name of my production company, Bennett Alliance.
Yeah.
And we produced every year a one-day festival with jazz, rock, folk music. We had everything from, Charlie Hunter would come out, guitar player. My band was there. This great electronica artist, Joy Electric, who's based on the West Coast. He was out there a lot. We brought groups in from all over the country. And my idea was to get a lot of eclectic sounds happening on one stage. I didn't want to favor any specific genre. I just wanted everything to be equal. And it really worked. We did it for about 5 years, and it was very successful. I only stopped doing it because my group was so busy traveling and touring that I just couldn't commit enough time to producing. But, I used to be very much involved in the festival world, producing albums. I had my own record label during that time, so I was wearing a lot of hats.
So while producing it, I'm sure you learned a lot, and it started and it stopped. Maybe just run its course, like a TV show, for instance,
Yeah.
But I'm sure when you were doing that, you learned so much into, with regards to how booking works.
Yeah.
How you already had a recording label then. You already learned how recording worked and so forth. Was there some misconceptions that you used to have that having a festival cleared up for you? Do you understand my question?
Yes, yes. Well, I learned a lot of things. It's on the job training. I learned that in order to get something done, it usually requires one person who
Yeah.
cares enough to get the job done,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And as the old saying goes, pick the guy or the girl who's the most busy, because they actually are the ones who have it together who will get it done. It's
yeah.
not the people who are just sitting around.
Yeah.
It's people who are busy and active who are actually the ones who can get things done.
Yeah.
So during this time, this was around 2004, 2005, I was living in Boston. I'm based in New York City now, but I lived in Boston for a long time. I was a booking manager for 3 clubs in Boston: the Stork Club, the Fireplace Restaurant, and another club called forgetting. It's been a long time in
Yeah.
Cambridge, Massachusetts.
We'll
I'm
remember.
spacing on the name of the
Yeah.
club. It's been a long time. I blocked a lot of this out of my memory.
Yeah.
But I wore a lot of hats during that time, and I learned. I could understand what booking agents wanted to hear from artists and what they didn't want to hear. So musicians are always petrified about contacting booking agents because they don't want to bother them. And I always tell people, don't forget that it's just an email. You're sending an email to somebody. Emails are not as invasive as a phone call. So very few people want to be called on the phone in 2019. So I learned how to craft a quick, concise, strong email. And I learned when I was booking this festival that groups who were... I liked it when groups were persistent. If they wanted to perform at the festival, I appreciated them for writing me a lot. I wasn't annoyed by it, as long as they were doing it politely and they were well spoken.
Yeah.
So that was kind of an eye opener for me that persistence is not a bad thing, and most booking agents don't mind that as long as you're not calling them. I think when you start calling people on the phone, it can get a little bit annoying. But the ability to write well, I learned how to just express myself with words, typing. I never thought this would come in handy as a musician, but being able to express yourself in an email in maybe 2 paragraphs at the most was a great thing for me. Yeah.
For instance, we met on an email.
We met in an email.
You just
See what I mean?
You sent me an email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm sure the work you did with the festival, along with being able to manage a label, has helped you become more prolific than you would have been. For instance, I can't count how many albums you have so far. I think
We
it's
have 7.
Seven
We have
albums.
some-
Okay, so
7
this is the
albums.
7th album, and they were all like self-released.
Yeah.
Right. Awesome. So let's talk about your latest album. It's called We're the Orchestra.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's start
so-
with the name.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a funny name because there's only 2 of us on the
Okay.
album, but it's called We Are The Orchestra. My
Yeah.
producer wanted it to have kind of a catchy ring to it. So I was commissioned to arrange and write the music for a show, a theater production at the Whitney Museum in New York City.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, called Whitman at the Whitney. And I was commissioned to write all of the woodwind parts and string parts for 2 people. So I hired my friend Mark Cochio, played all the string parts, and I played all the woodwinds. This was on a show that ran for about
What's
a
his
month.
name again? Can you?
Mark Cochio.
Okay, Mark Coach. Okay.
And we did the show, and the show was a huge hit, and I was really excited.
The show was just the 2 of you guys.
Just the 2 of us and there was spoken word poetry, the poetry of Walt Whitman sort of set to, like, the plot of the show kind of centered around his poems.
Yeah.
It was very unique. So you had the backdrop of the Whitney Museum artwork, American artwork, and of course Walt Whitman was very much a part of the Civil War, and he had siblings who were injured in the Civil War, so it was a very big part of his poetry. So people think of Walt Whitman as being kind of this edgy, kind of outlandish poet, but he was also a very astute, historian. So a lot of the show was just very historical poetry that was inspired during the Civil War. And it's interesting, going off topic a little bit, but after the Civil War ended, both sides, the North and the South, the country had been destroyed. The whole country was decimated. So everyone came together to restore the country. and it's beautiful. So you see that in his poetry. So getting off topic, but that was the show.
Okay.
And then my producer said, Daniel, you have to make this into an album. And I said, that's a great idea. Let's do that. I'll hire. I have a large group that I travel with, I tour with, and she said, no, let's just do it with 2 people, like you did on the show, and you guys can overdub all of the instruments.
Okay. Oh, nice.
I thought, wow, that's going to be a lot of work. So,
Yeah.
And it was. So we recorded 15 instruments. I did all the wind parts, saxophone, flute, clarinet, all that, oboe. And then Mark did all the string parts, bass, guitar, mandolin, all that. Yeah.
It turned out really, really great. So when you're touring now, when you tour, do you guys maintain that duo thing, or do you have other musicians with you?
Yeah, the
playing
touring
all the
group.
different
The
parts?
touring group is a little different. There's 3 of us when I tour, and it's Nat Janoff, a different guitarist, and then a percussionist named Coco Bermejo. That's a great name, Coco.
Yeah.
Coco Bermejo on the drums, and they're very good friends of mine. We just did a week in Florida.
Okay.
We're going to be in Los Angeles next month. We'll be in the Midwest, so we can travel light. Another thing that I've learned from booking, just from being in the business, keep your group small.
Yeah.
You can keep more of the profits. You have less stress. Fewer faces to feed.
Yeah.
So the touring
More
group
creative. You.
Yeah, in the long run, you are more creative
Yeah.
because you have to do more with fewer people. We don't travel with a bass player. So my guitar player, Nat Janoff, he has a whole array of pedals, chorus. He's got a looping pedal, where he can record himself, and we have to create. And I've got all my doubling, my different instruments, saxophone, flute. We're trying to just keep the sound going. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And you're very exposed.
Yeah.
You can't hide behind a lot of instruments. You have to really own it. There's just 3 of us. Yeah.
So how has the audience reception been? Do they understand what's going on? Because I'm assuming that you don't have the whole, say, slides or poetry reading of the origin of the album. Does it come with it, or it's just the 2 of you performing this music?
Right. When we play this music, there's no slides, there's no visual element to it, which is fine. Sometimes I'll talk about the show. I'll talk about Walt Whitman. I actually knew very little bit. I don't, prior to the show, I didn't know a lot about Walt Whitman's poetry, but now I do, and I'm excited about it. So I'll tell people about it for 5 minutes on the stage, and that gets people thinking a little bit. But it's just the music. You have to just hear it and use your imagination.
Yeah. What kind of venues did you play? Are they usually traditional jazz venues?
It's all over the place. So we did our album release at the Blue Note here in New York City.
Dope.
We did our West Coast CD release at Herb Alpert's Vibrato, which is a great club in Los Angeles.
Okay.
But we do festivals, concert series. We just did a great concert series in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, at the Bennett House Museum. It's an outdoor space. So it's different. We play a lot of club dates, but we do museums, libraries. That's the beauty of making music in 2019 is that people want to hear and experience something new. It doesn't have to be in a club necessarily. It could be anywhere.
Nice. Let's talk about some of the songs on the album. By the way, the song names are like I don't know, unusual and very, very captivating. But let's talk about a few of them. Loose fitting spare tire.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always tell people, Lorens, I always say if I can just get people smiling before I even play the song, then we're off to a good start. Okay. So a lot of the song titles are just bizarre and they make people smile. Yeah. This song to me is a little bit when we travel, we fly to a city and then we usually get a rental car. So this is kind of in the back of my mind, just automobiles, driving, I don't know. So loose-fitting spare tire, I suppose. Now, that's never happened to me. I've never actually had an actual loose-fitting spare tire. Yeah. that would probably be a disaster if, but I think about it from time to time. I'm sure, it's popped into my head once when I jump into a rental car. It's just, am I going to get to the gig in one piece? We were in the Rocky Mountains last year near Denver, and we had to drive through a very intense blizzard, and we were driving downhill. So this was scary. So our car was swerving. I mean, I was going about 10 miles an hour, and I was just riding the brake. I mean, it took us 3 hours to get to the gig. And out there, it can be a blizzard when you're up in the mountains. When we got to Denver, it was beautiful. It was like, in the mid 40s. It was a beautiful sunny day. But it's funny. You think about these things when you're touring. You think about your car. You think about the airplane. You think about, can we fit all of our gear onto an airplane? We actually travel with a drum set. Sometimes, the drum set is provided by the venue, but sometimes we travel with a drum set. Coco has a small drum set that we can fit in an airplane. But these are the things that I have to kind of think about. Can we get this thing on the airplane? So, to answer your question, some of it's just bizarre, the song titles, and some of it is maybe inspired by living.
All right. Refinancing for elephants.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, right? Refinancing for elephants. So there's an earlier version of this song that was called "An Elephant Buys a New Car." Okay. It's on an album called "Clockhead Goes to Camp," which also probably makes no sense. But
I listened to that one actually.
So that's okay. So I kept the elephant thing going because we sort of redid the song, and Refinancing for Elephants. I don't know. It's like a kid's book. I always imagine my favorite kid's author is Richard Scarry. Yeah. I have two kids, Naomi and Hudson. They're both under the age of 5, so we read a lot of books. So maybe that's in there too. Berenstain Bears, Richard Scarry, Dr. Seuss. These little kind of cartoon images. Yeah.
I like the instrumentation on that one. It's I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of softer, a little airy.
Very airy, that's a good description. Yeah. It is. It's very earthy. It kind of sounds. Someone told me it kind of sounds like The Lion King or something. Like you can imagine Simba. Because it's very kind of sounds like folk music. It's a little bit different. Yeah.
How about theme from II Trovatore?
Oh, yeah. So that was some of the pieces on the new album are actually classical arrangements that we did at the Whitney Museum. This is another little side note. Walt Whitman, getting back, this is like the podcast about Walt Whitman. This is cool. Walt Whitman was actually a fan of European opera. Who would have thought? And he was also a big fan of just, Appalachian music and American folk music too. So he had some very interesting tastes. So one of the things that we had to do on this theater show is arrange some opera arrangements. So Il Trovatore is Verdi, so this has nothing to do with saxophone at all. This saxophone had not even been invented when this song was written. So we took 2 Verdi pieces and adapted it. The other one was the theme from Ernani, which was an opera that Verdi wrote. And at first you think opera, it's so nuanced. But if you really just listen to, you're a musician. I'm sure you go through this all the time. The more you listen to music, you realize that the melodies are kind of timeless.
Yes, yeah,
You know what
yeah.
I mean?
That's one thing I was gonna say about this song, Trovatore.
Yeah, yeah.
The melody is like poignant. It's just there.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah. It's just as valid today as it was 200 years ago
Yeah.
in a way. So that's the beauty of it. So those songs really spoke to me. So we wanted to include some of that on the album.
Nice. You are listening to Doing Jazz with Lawrence Chuno. The guest on this episode is Daniel Bennet. His new album, We Are The Orchestra, is available for purchase, download, and streaming. If you're on Spotify or iTunes, please check out and follow the Doing Jazz playlist, a one-stop playlist for songs by all the Doing Jazz guests so far. All right, let's talk about you. Your origins. You're from Rochester, New York. You already mentioned that.
I am. I'm from the snow belt.
From the
They
snow
say,
belt.
where it just snows until
Yeah.
May. Yeah.
Growing up, did you come from a musical family?
No, not at all.
Okay.
My parents are not musicians. Both of my sisters played clarinet,
Okay.
and that was inspiring to me. And my older sister Kristen took me to a high school jazz concert where I heard a kid named Chris Oldfield, high school kid, and he played the Pink Panther theme on tenor saxophone. And I was hooked. So at that point I said, okay, saxophone it is.
How old were you then?
I was 10.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was my inspiration. Was,
Okay.
And then when we had to pick our band instrument in school, we had to choose our top 3 choices.
Yeah.
But I just wrote saxophone, saxophone, saxophone.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
my teacher wanted me to play trumpet. She
Yeah.
actually didn't think I had a good embouchure for saxophone. But I wanted to do the saxophone.
Yeah.
And the rest is history.
And this might sound like a dumb question, but I don't play wind instruments. I'm not a saxophonist. You started with a tenor saxophone, and how did you now transition to playing multiple horns,
Right.
different kind of saxophones, and different kind of other wind instruments?
Yeah, that's a great question. It was very gradual.
Yeah.
Young musicians are always concerned that they don't know enough of their doubling. They're not good at flute, clarinet, and I usually tell them, look, you don't have to learn everything when you're really young.
Yeah.
So I started on saxophone, then I went to clarinet, and then maybe in college picked up flute and oboe. And one thing that I did to make sure that I was good at these instruments is I said yes to every possible gig I could do. I did a lot of theater gigs. I mean, hundreds, probably thousands of different pit orchestra theater
Yeah.
gigs. I played in folk groups. I had a friend who played kind of like Celtic folk music, and it was a very low pressure situation for me. His name is Andrew, and I said, look, I'm trying flute for the first time. Can I just try? Because I knew it would be a low pressure environment. He
Yeah.
said, sure, why not? So that was like my chance to make a lot of mistakes
Yeah.
and teach myself. And then,
I
also.
don't get it though. Like it's a new it's a different instrument.
Right. It is
You
different,
know?
but some of the fingerings are similar. So a flute,
Yeah.
in a way, is kind of like a saxophone, but you're holding it up in the air,
Yeah.
with both hands. It's a little. The fingerings are similar. Same with flute or with clarinet. Clarinet has a lot of open holes. Oboe has a lot of similar
Yeah.
qualities, but the oboe embouchure is extremely difficult. Blowing into a double reed. So, I just tell people know your limitations,
Yeah.
and you'll make it.
But you have to practice though. How do you become really? You have to pick one
Yes.
and be really good at it.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
how do you pick that one, be really good at it, and still have time for the others?
You have to have good time management. I don't know. Saxophone is my main instrument, and the worst compliment you can give me. People do this, and I think they mean well, but they will come up to me after a show and they'll say that was great. Is flute your main instrument?
Yeah.
And I always like, no, saxophone is my main instrument. Now, many doublers would consider that a great thing. You want to sound like every instrument is your best. But I'm like you. I want to specialize. I mean, I'm not just a jack of all trades. So I have always seen myself as a saxophonist. I have a master's degree. This is going to sound crazy, but I have a master's degree in classical saxophone from the New England Conservatory. I usually don't tell people this because they get kind of funny ideas about me.
Why? What kind
Well,
of funny
because
idea?
classical saxophone, you got that
Yeah.
funny vibrato, and
Oh,
it's
I
just kind
see.
of a strange genre in and of itself to kind of be a part of. So, I did it to learn more about extended technique. I had a great teacher in Boston, Ken Rednowski. The whole time, though, I was a jazz musician, but I wanted to further my technique. So I'm obsessed with the saxophone. That is my main focus. But if you were to see me in concert, you might not always know that. You'll hear flute. I have clarinet, piccolo. I do a lot of piccolo because that's just where it's going now. That's where the music is going. And like I said earlier, when there's just three of us, you have to have some variety.
Yeah.
You have to, just be on your game
Yeah.
and be versatile.
That's
Yeah.
insane. Insane in a very good way.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how many people who can just be good enough to arrange for different instruments and play all of them on the same album. So that's a lot. That's really good. Okay. So where did you go to college?
So I did my undergrad at a wonderful Christian school called Roberts Wesleyan College. It's a Christian college in Rochester. And in a way, I did music there, but in a way, I think I learned the most just about life.
Yeah.
I met my wife there. Sort of met my wife there. I met her, I knew her, and then I kind of met her much later, but that's a different story. But a lot of great things happened to me at Roberts. So I did that. I lived in Rochester for a while. Then I did my master's degree at New England Conservatory, which was great too in its own way. It was a different focus, and then I had a lot of other private teachers and things along the way and mentors. I was always trying to learn from older musicians and be be willing to learn new things.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. And so when you were an undergrad, your major was music, right?
Yeah, it was music
Music
education
education
with a focus in
and
saxophone,
saxophone. Okay.
which that's another thing. Like I was doing choral conducting, I was doing arranging, I was taking string methods, all these different things, and I thought to myself, I'll never be able to use this, but I use this constantly. I wouldn't have been able to arrange the music for this show if I
Yeah.
didn't understand string instruments, if I didn't understand arranging.
Yeah.
When you're younger, you want to be. All I wanted to be, Lawrence,
Yeah.
was a bebop player. That was my focus.
Yeah.
Now I don't do any of that. Thank goodness, I've been liberated. I'm not part of that.
Yeah.
I am. I always tell people, find your own path.
Yeah.
There is no jazz establishment anymore. You are the establishment.
Yeah. You're an
It's-
institution.
yeah, and that's the beauty of this now. So it took me a long time to do this, and it takes a lot of bravery, but it's liberating. So I look back and I think, man, the stuff that I learned at Roberts Wesleyan College in Rochester, New York, this little Christian college, that was life-changing. I just didn't appreciate it for 10 years. So it's interesting how life teaches you these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And then I'm assuming that Robert Wesleyan it wasn't a conservatory at all. It was
No.
just like, okay, academic.
It was a liberal arts
liberal
college.
arts,
It had an
okay.
amazing,
Yeah.
still has an amazing music program.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
to go from that, then I went to
To a conservatory.
conservatory.
Yeah.
So you can imagine,
Yeah.
I was kind of a mess
Yeah.
emotionally. People at the conservatory screaming at me to do
Yeah.
this and this, and I had, I was talking about Ken Radnofsky. God bless him, I love
Mm-hmm.
Ken, but he really had to kick my butt. I mean, he was screaming in my ear like a drill sergeant. I'd be playing in front of a mirror in his studio. He's looking at my embouchure. He's got me laying on the floor. He's looking at my breathing and my diaphragm and all this stuff. And again, I don't think I appreciated that either until later. Now I do. Now I appreciate everything that he taught me. And then the jazz teachers there. I studied with Jerry Bergonzi, George Garzone, Bob Moses. Got to play with Bob Brookmeyer in a big band setting. Got to do a lot of cool stuff with the jazz program there too. So
Yeah.
I didn't always enjoy it though because I felt very alone. It was very stressful. But now I appreciate everything. Yeah.
I have a question about practicing, As a jazz musician, when you're learning a new song, or even any song, a song you've already known, but you're playing it maybe for the first time, you want to keep playing to the point that you can play it in every key,
Yeah.
right? So what's the best approach to that? Do you just start with your sax? You play this tenor saxophone,
Or
right?
alto, yeah.
Alto
yeah,
is in
Or
E
both.
flat? Is it in
E-flat,
E flat?
yeah, you got
Okay.
it, you got it.
Do you go from E flat? After E flat, you go to E and then F and so forth. Or how do you choose the next key to learn the song in?
So when I'm practicing, I use play-alongs, which are great. To this day, I'll use that to practice, just to blow over standards. And of course, with the internet, you can look up Stella by Starlight in the key of F sharp if you want to. It's all out there. You can play along with all that stuff. But I'll tell you this too. I write music that constantly modulates, and my music can seem frustrating if you're playing it for the first time because it sounds easy and it sounds very kind of like pop music, folk, but it's changing keys a lot.
Yeah.
And that in and of itself has been good for me to teach myself to do that, to play my own music in a way I've had to challenge myself. So that is in there, and then I challenge my students. So I teach at the New York Jazz Academy in Times Square, and I also teach at the Bloomingdale School of Music. Actually, that's where I was this morning before the interview. And I will often teach a student something that's really at the top of the difficulty spectrum for a student, in a way to almost challenge myself. Can I speak about it? Can I talk about it? Can I explain it to them?
Yeah.
And then I internalize it myself differently. you have to practice on your own. I'm certainly not trying to say that you should just learn by just, playing with students all day. But playing with students, it works out a different part of your brain. And if you have to explain something to a student,
Yeah.
if you have to explain to a student how to play a 2-5-1 in the key of C, key of C sharp, key of D, you internalize that deeply in yourself because you're speaking it to somebody and then you're demonstrating for them. So I have a lot of methods. I mean, I'm sure you go through this too. As an adult, you're very busy.
Yeah.
My group tours over 100 dates a year, and I perform in the city all the time. And I don't, time is money. You have to figure out some creative way to learn quickly in a short, concise amount of time. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're going to conclude with a little game I call Turn Up, Mute. So how it works is that I give you two options. You choose one and we get rid of the other. So you turn up one and we mute the other. All right? Okay. So be careful.
Oh, man.
All right.
I'm ready.
Rochester, Boston. Which one do you turn up and which one do you mute? You went to school in Boston, right?
I did both.
Okay.
Let's turn up Boston.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, I forgot to explain the
there's more.
caveat.
Yeah.
The caveat is that whatever you turn up now, it's just for now. You could leave here and turn up the other one and mute the one you turned up now.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, that's
okay,
that's
so
an
there's a
out
little
for you.
twist.
Yeah,
okay,
there's a little
cool.
twist. Yeah. So, what's up with Boston?
What's up with Boston? The Boston Red Sox.
Okay.
Listen, I lived in Kenmore Square above Fenway Park, so I got to watch the Boston crazy people every single day during the regular season. The Boston Red Sox fans coming out of Fenway Park, screaming and throwing things and acting like hooligans. But Kenmore Square, man. I lived. That was where and actually when I got married, we did have a nice apartment in Kenmore Square, but it was so noisy. It was so noisy, and our window literally overlooked the overflow of people coming out of the stadium. I didn't even we didn't even have an air conditioning unit in the window because I was afraid it was going to fall out and like land on somebody.
Land on somebody.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Sometimes I think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's something. I'm looking at your air conditioning unit in your window. It looks okay. I'll keep an eye on it.
And there's a garden out there that there's hardly anybody.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
there's
so
a garden.
it's like when it falls, it just falls into a garden.
Garden.
Unless
right.
there's a gardener.
I'm actually surprised in New York you don't hear more stories
about AC
units killing people. I mean, it sounds horrible, but
I know that.
Right? I mean, it's really dangerous.
Yes,
Man.
Okay, so Boston. I want to ask a few questions about Rochester. What's in Rochester apart from RIT?
You know about RIT?
Yeah. I got admitted into RIT when I applied to grad school.
That's a tough school.
I went to school for math. Yeah, so
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so when I was applying for my PhD, I applied to RIT. I applied to a bunch of schools, but RIT accepted me really late, so I didn't.
So you should do my taxes, Lorens. You're good at math.
Yeah, but
we'll talk after the interview.
It's just adding and subtracting.
That's what my CPA says. It's only just adding and subtracting, and then I'm like, no, it's not. There's some strange like division or something you're doing. As soon as he says, "What's the square footage of your apartment?" immediately my brain just goes blank. My wife is good at this.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell you what the square footage. My brain doesn't think that way.
How large is it?
It's like this. So
it's like this.
Very similar to this.
Okay.
But I wouldn't know. I just wouldn't know, man.
This is like 450 square feet.
Okay.
Kind of, yeah. So I mean, but you don't have to know though. They can the people.
Someone will tell me.
Yeah,
right?
Somebody should tell you. Your landlord should tell you that. You don't have to measure it yourself. Yeah, it's tough measuring.
Thank you, Lawrence. I
anyway.
feel better already.
Yeah.
Thank you. So RIT, man. There's RIT, University of Rochester, Roberts Wesleyan College, my alma mater, is there. Kodak, Eastman Kodak, is there. They've been struggling. Kodak tragically did not get into the digital game. I don't know why.
I know.
Right?
Yeah. They messed up.
I don't know what they were. Yeah.
It's like a company. It's like an industry or a company that was just wiped out by technology.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't. Now I have heard that Kodak actually holds a lot of the patents for some of the digital technology, and that's actually where they've been able to get some form of money, but they never developed any products.
Yeah.
So they're not doing great. Xerox is there,
Oh. Oh.
so
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
everybody needs to make a Xerox copy,
Yeah.
right?
Every now and then.
Yeah, every now and
But
then.
it's so cheap.
It is right.
Yeah, until you start promoting your album, then you discover that making those one
Oh.
sheets can be expensive.
Oh, it's insane,
Yeah.
man. Right. And you're folding everything.
Yeah, you're
You're
folding
mailing
everything,
it, and the postage. And there are many people who still want the physical product.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
writers.
Yeah.
We just had this was worth it. We just had a 5-star review in the UK Jazz Journal, which is an awesome
Wow,
magazine.
congrats.
Well, they insisted. We mailed them. I think we actually ended up mailing them 2 press kits. Maybe they didn't get the first one.
Yeah.
They asked for twice. They asked for, and that's expensive to send this stuff
Yeah.
overseas.
Yeah.
So, but it's worth it. You have to kind of like see the big picture. But yeah, Xerox.
People still mail me CDs. I
they?
appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah. Like all those.
And
Well,
do you prefer that, or do you like digital? Is it easier?
Sometimes I kind of like it because you can just hold it and look at the CDs, look at the album names, look at who played on it, learn more about the person quickly, and then know what to talk about with the person.
Right.
But sometimes I just go on the internet, but sometimes you go on some people's website, they don't have anything on, so I actually like it. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, how do you? Because I've heard a few of your interviews, and
Yeah.
they're great. How do you come up with these questions? Because I'm always curious from an
Oh.
interviewer
I just
perspective. Is it just
First of all, I only have people on that that I'm able to listen to their music and appreciate their music, and
Yeah.
I appreciate their body of work. So it's like a fan art for me. It's like something I like to do. So I just keep listening to their music and discover a few things about their music. Oh, I like this. I want to ask him about
Right.
what's up with it. And then maybe I read something about their background and and then I just start talking with them, and there's always stuff to talk about.
There's always
more,
something.
more stuff to talk
Yeah,
about.
isn't that funny?
Yeah, yeah. But it can be tough with some people. It's
Yeah.
not that easy. I try to make first of all, I know that I want to make my apartment more. I don't want to say friendly, but because every home
It's very
every home
friendly.
is friendly.
You know,
yeah, but I
this
just
candle. You can't see this on
Yeah.
the podcast, but it smells great in here. You
Oh,
they got
thank
this
you.
Candle. What is
Thank
that
you.
scent? By the way?
I just bought it from the CVS.
You
I don't
did?
even- yeah, I don't even know that. I'm gonna look it up.
It
yeah,
smells great.
Yeah,
people.
but I want it to be like a little bit scanty, at the same time homey, so that if you come in, I mean business.
Yeah,
even
yeah.
though I'm at my place, And I just
Interesting.
yeah. So I just I don't know. I guess.
Well, man, it works. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We need stuff like this. We need more jazz podcasts. It's tough. It's very, very time consuming, unless that's the only thing you do. But
Right.
getting interesting people. I have about 3 different PR agents that send me people, and sometimes
Oh.
they send me up to 10 people, and I have
Wow.
to choose just one of them. Sometimes I want somebody on, somebody I know who doesn't have a PR person,
Mm-hmm.
and I just call up the person, and I feel bad for the PR agents, So, but they're not paying me, so I don't care.
I know.
I just,
that's
I just
right.
do-
That's right.
yeah.
This is your party.
Yeah, it's mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Next question.
Yes.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Sonny Rollins, Wayne Shorter.
Sonny Rollins.
Oh my gosh.
So, I've just throughout my whole life I've connected more with his music.
Yeah.
The bridge. I don't know why.
Okay.
It's probably blasphemous to say
Yeah.
that I'm indifferent towards Wayne Shorter. I mean, it's not that I'm indifferent. I just
Yeah.
don't listen to his music
Yeah,
as
that much. Yeah. Okay.
as Sonny Rollins. I actually saw Sonny Rollins in a music store in Boston at Rayburn Music, which is no longer in business. And there is a Rayburn in New York that's still going strong, but the Rayburn in Boston is no longer there. But Sonny Rollins came in
Yeah.
because he only gets his horn fixed by this guy Emilio Lyons, who's this legendary repair guy in Boston.
Yeah.
I think he's semi-retired. But Sonny Rollins came in one day, and the whole store got really quiet. and we were all just kind of watching him.
Oh wow.
I was in college, and I'm like, you know what, that's a cool thing
Legend.
to see, you know.
Yeah.
And the guy, he had a driver, and the driver drove him from, I think he lives in New Paltz, New York, or something. Drove him from New York to Boston, waited outside, and Emilio told me that Sonny, when he gets his horn fixed, he would play all the way home. He would sit in the back of the car and just noodle and play on the horn.
Back of a taxi? Oh.
In the back of, I think he
okay.
was in a some kind of taxi or limo or something.
Okay.
I think he's mostly retired now,
Yeah.
right?
I don't know much about it. I know a little bit about Wayne Shorter. More,
right. Right, when we were talking about Wayne Shorter, so you are
earlier.
a Wayne Shorter guy.
Yeah, it's so funny because I've had 3 people. You're like the 3rd horn player I've asked this particular question, and I haven't released any of them. So I'll try to release it back to back to just see the.
And they're all Sonny?
Oh, everybody's Sonny. Mike Lee, do you know Mike Lee?
Yeah. The name, yeah.
And there's another lady, Susan Jones.
Okay.
And no, Jessica Jones. Sorry, Jessica Jones.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jessica. And then everybody's like Sonny. You guys are all sax players. So
that's the one that pops into my head.
Yeah.
Saxophone Colossus. You know, I always thought Sonny Rollins, and I've seen him play a couple times. I saw him play at the Eastman Theater in Rochester when I was a kid. I always just appreciated his humor and his playing.
I see.
He's not afraid to really stretch and also play with intonation and do things that are a little bit gutsy. I mean, really kind of get on the edge of his own
What
sound.
do you mean by a little bit of intonation? You mean off intonation?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, but I think Wayne kind of does that too.
Yeah.
Just they're so expressive.
Yeah.
That they're not afraid. This is good. I don't know how to say this. They're not afraid to play out of tune and purposely to play. I mean, Ornette Coleman would do this. Play. To really stretch, to have so much emotion in your sound that maybe it goes a little sharp, but not in a bad way. It doesn't bother the audience at all, but because it's just it's part of the emotion of how he plays. I mean, that's liberating. I mean, this is a guy, both of them, you know, who spent an entire half a century developing their sound.
Yeah. There's this guy that I started listening to, Courtney Pine, or is it Courtney?
Oh, Courtney Pine.
Courtney Pine, yeah, Courtney Pine.
Yeah.
And I think he does that a little bit. Sometimes it just goes crazy, and it's like the intonation is all over the place, but it's still so good. It's still killing.
He's in England, right?
Yeah, he's in England. He's English. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a beautiful space to be in, and that's something that I think as you get older, you can get more of that. It's the emotion. It's not caring what the audience thinks. So it's inspiring to hear.
Nice.
Yeah.
Last one. Clockhead Goes to Camp versus Peace and Stability Among Bears. Those are two of your kids, two of your children, 2 of your albums.
Yeah, 2 kids, and you want me to pick one.
You have to pick one. Sorry.
Okay, well,
but you have an out. It's just for now.
It's just for now. Okay, well, we are going to turn up Peace and Stability Among Bears.
Okay, all right.
Because we did 3 albums based on bears. We called it the Bear Trilogy, and actually, a song from this album. This album was featured on NPR a few years ago because the album has a lot of rock, kind of like fusion rock overtones, and there was the show Here and Now did a segment on groups that are fusing different styles. So we have a song, it's the closing track on the album, the song is called Bears in a Covered Wagon. It's still our #1 selling song on iTunes, and that song really sums up what we were doing for 3 years. We did these albums. We put out a new album every year, and it's a fusion of really like electronica, rock, and modern jazz. And we had a lot of fun doing it. I was living in Boston when we did these, so these are old. Yeah. This goes way back. Yeah.
Nice. Daniel Bennet, thank you for coming on Doing Jazz. I'm really happy we got to do this.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you. We did it. Later.